10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Bienvenue à l'Expo Science pancanadienne 2022. We know this year has presented many challenges, but through it all, you have persevered and are here to showcase your science. Congratulations! Nous avons bien hâte de pouvoir célébrer virtuellement vos succès cette semaine. Nous avons prévu une semaine amusante pour vous et nous espérons que vous profiterez pleinement de toutes les activités prévues. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the Canada-wide Science Fair, and although we're holding this event virtually, we want to ensure that we're still able to celebrate this milestone. In 1962, the first Canada-wide Science Fair was held at Carleton University in Ottawa and welcomed 45 finalists and projects from 12 regions. This year, we will showcase and recognize 372 of the country's top young scientists selected from Youth Science Canada's network of 108 regions. Throughout the week, you will see reference to the 60 years of Canada-wide Science Fair history. We recommend checking out the 60th Anniversary Museum in Project Board Lobby to learn a little bit more about our history and discover some notable Canada-wide Science Fair alumni. We encourage you to take photos this week and post them to social media using the hashtag Canada-wide Science Fair 2022. Cette année marque le 60e anniversaire de l'Expo Science pancanadienne. En 1962, la première ESPC s'est tenue à l'Université Carleton à Ottawa et a accueilli 45 finalistes et projets provenant de 12 régions. Cette année, nous présenterons et reconnaîtrons plus de 372 des meilleurs jeunes scientifiques du pays, représentants sélectionnés parmi le réseau de 108 régions de Sciences Jeunesse Canada. Tout au long de la semaine, nous ferons référence au 60e anniversaire et à l'historique de l'Expo Science pancanadienne. Nous vous suggérons de visiter le musée à partir du hall virtuel sur Project Board pour en connaître un peu plus au sujet de nos anciennes et de nos anciens de l'ESPC. Prenez plusieurs photos et publiez-les dans les médias sociaux en utilisant le mot-clic ESPC 22. We're so happy to be able to celebrate your success virtually this week. We have a fun week planned for you, and we hope that you will take full advantage of all of the activities scheduled. À la suite de cet événement, nous organiserons une séance d'orientation au cours de laquelle nous explorerons le programme de la semaine, plus en détail, et nous jetterons un coup d'œil au fonctionnement de notre plateforme. Nous espérons vous y voir. Following this event today, we will be hosting an orientation session where we will dive deeper into the weekly schedule and take a look at how our platform works. We look forward to seeing you there. If you are viewing this event on Feedloop and would like to hear this stream in French, please click on the interpretation button below and select French as your language. Si vous regardez cet événement sur Feedloop et que vous souhaitez entendre la transmission en français, veuillez cliquer sur le bouton d'interprétation ci-dessous et sélectionner le français comme langue. As you likely know, the Canada-wide Science Fair was supposed to take place at the University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, New Brunswick this year. Unfortunately, we were unable to host this event in person. However, we have endeavored to incorporate as much Fredericton and New Brunswick culture into this year's event as possible. L'Expo Sciences pancanadienne était censée se dérouler à Fredericton, au Nouveau-Brunswick. Bien que nous ne puissions pas nous rencontrer en présentiel, nous avons tenté d'incorporer le plus de culture du Nouveau-Brunswick dans l'événement virtuel. This week, you will have the chance to partake in university experiences put on by University of New Brunswick, engage with speakers from the region, sample some delicious treats from New Brunswick found in your Canada-wide Science Fair boxes, and listen to some fantastic local music. As such, we are still considering the University of New Brunswick the home of this year's event. Nous considérons donc l'Université du Nouveau-Brunswick comme étant l'hôtesse de l'événement. We respectfully acknowledge that UNB stand on unsurrendered and unceded traditional Wolastoqey land. The lands of Wabadaki people were recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by the university is known as Wolastoq, along which Wolastoqey, the people of the beautiful and bounty river. Wolastoq is also known as the St. John River. We are honored to be joined by the University of New Brunswick's knowledge carrier in residence, Jeannie Bartabog, who will provide us with today's opening prayer and smudging ceremony. Elder Jeannie will also be joined by Elder Maggie Paul, who will perform a welcoming song. Nous avons l'honneur d'être rejoints par l'aînée en résidence de l'Université du Nouveau-Brunswick, Jeannie Bartabog, et Maggie Paul, qui nous feront la prière d'ouverture et une musique de bienvenue. I invite Rennie Barlow, Executive Director of Youth Science Canada, to welcome Elder Jeannie Bartabog and Elder Maggie Paul.
I offer this tobacco for the opening welcome, the welcome song, and the smudging.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna light that smudge. Chiki sok wegi walalik uchit kiskuk dandel mawalik. Wegi walalik uchitum sakoi dandeuji wilba miahak dandeuji galuk. Ere wachta mai uchitum sakoi wilba miachten giskuka uchitum sakoi wilba miachten uchit malchewich. Panaruin en kamlamunin en uchit namidu nachtik sidaman sakoi dandeuji galukum sakoi ulasit hamu. Ere wachta mai uchit negamoina. Wegi walalik uchit nagu sira wegi walalik uchit nege samgwan. Wegi walali kuchit wisiska huchidam sekoidan nudai ai uchid sekoi wolba miachten. Wegi walali kuchit sisipka huchidam sekoidan nege mawidaiga huchidam sekoidan delganoda mayutinen. Panaruinen en kamlamuninen uchidam sekoi wolba miachten. O giskuk nege yakka amka mukki uchid mijuajishka uchid malchewech kuchkidajit. Ere wachta mai uchid nege moina. Ahom chidam sakoi will be bamiachten. Aho chidam sakoi when bam oliaginum set koi. Aho chidam setan will bamiachten. Uchidam set when we siska hochiduk nagu set ka hochidam set when danik. dan uchid msit dan wolba miachtedel. Wegi walalik msit nohama.
Thank you, Elder Bardebog and Elder Paul. L'exposition pancanadienne ne serait tout simplement pas possible sans le soutien généreux de nos commanditaires. The Canada-wide Science Fair simply would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. We want to recognize our innovator-level sponsors, nos commanditaires dans la catégorie des innovateurs. Engineering.com, Intact Foundation, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, NSERC, and a special welcome to Sanofi Canada. Our developer-level sponsors, nos commanditaires dans la catégorie des développeurs, Cenovus Energy and Youth Can Innovate. Thank you for your support. Merci infiniment à nos commanditaires. Please welcome Rennie Barlow, Executive Director of Youth Science Canada, to provide opening remarks. Accueillons Monsieur Rennie Barlow, le Directeur général de Sciences Jeunesse Canada.
Merci, Dominic. On behalf of Youth Science Canada, I'm pleased to welcome you to Canada-wide Science Fair 2022, the 60th anniversary of this remarkable event. Je suis heureux de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à l'Expo Science pancanadienne 2022, le 60e anniversaire de cet événement remarquable. Youth Science Canada fuels the curiosity of Canadian youth through science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM projects. Sciences Jeunesse Canada vise à inspirer les jeunes Canadiennes et Canadiens à développer leur sens de la recherche et leur esprit critique dans le domaine des sciences. Our network includes 108 regional organizations from coast to coast to coast. You can check out the map under Resources in Project Board or in the Award Ceremony program in your Canada-wide Science Fair box. Cette année, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir deux nouvelles régions, une région de l'Alberta et une région nationale. Please join me in welcoming our two newest regions, Canadian Black Scientists Network Youth and University of Alberta Medical Students Association Virtual. CWSF finalists represent the very best of the students who exhibited their projects at regional fairs, and just 0.1% of the 500,000 students across Canada who do some kind of STEM project every year. Regardless of the results on Thursday, be proud of your accomplishment. Les finalistes de l'ESPC représentent le meilleur des élèves qui présentent des projets aux expositions régionales et 0,1% de demi-million d'élèves au Canada qui font un projet de STEM chaque année. Quels que soient les résultats jeudi, soyez fiers de vos réalisations. Your projects inspire us and demonstrate that young Canadians have extraordinary ideas and solutions. Never stop asking intriguing questions and identifying challenging problems. In closing, congratulations to all the finalists. Nous félicitons tous les finalistes. Have a great week. Bonne semaine à tous.
Thank you, Rennie. We are thankful for the dedicated group of staff and volunteers called Team UV who put on this event every year. Cette année, nous avons la chance de disposer d'une équipe de 30 ambassadrices et ambassadeurs qui seront disponibles toute la semaine dans les salons de leurs équipes respectives pour rencontrer les finalistes et animer les sessions. This year, we are fortunate to have a team of 30 ambassadors who will be available all week in their respective team lounges, hanging out with finalists, moderating sessions, and teaching you fun things, just like this.
Don't think about it, just move your body. Listen to the music, sing oh yeah, oh. Just move those left feet, go ahead, get crazy. Anyone can do it, sing oh yeah, oh. Show the world you got that fire. Feel the rhythm getting louder. Show the room what you can do, prove to them you got the moves. Hey, I don't know about you, but I feel better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah, I'm better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah. And we can do this together. I bet you feel better when you're dancing. Yeah, yeah. When you finally let go and you say that solo, 'cause you listen to that music, sing it oh, hey, oh. 'Cause you're confident, babe, yeah, and you make your hips sway. We knew that you could do it, sing oh, hey, oh. Show the world you got that fire, baby. Feel the rhythm getting louder. Show the room what you can do, prove to them you got the moves. Hey, I don't know about you, but I feel better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah, I'm better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah.
To teach you the Canada-wide Science Fair 2022 dance. We want to see those moves. I'm thrilled not to introduce this year's opening keynote speaker. Notre conférencière principale d'ouverture est Ann Makosinski, une jeune inventrice et PDG de l'entreprise Makotronics. Elle a participé à plusieurs expositions régionales, à l'exposition pancanadienne à 2 reprises et à l'exposition internationale de Google. Elle a présenté à des événements TEDx et a fait des apparitions dans le magazine Forbes, le magazine Times et Popular Science. Ann Makosinski is a student inventor, keynote speaker, and CEO of Makotronic Enterprises. Ann has been participating in Science Fair since grade 6, making it to the Canada-wide Science Fair in 2012 and winning gold in 2013 for her project, the Hollow Flashlight, a thermoelectric flashlight powered by the heat of your hands. Since then, she gone on to win the Google Science Fair, presented on The Tonight Show twice with Jimmy Fallon, presented at 5 TEDx events, has been included in both Time magazines and Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 list, was named Popular Science Breakout Young Scientist of the Year, has sailed the Northwest Passage as a youth ambassador, presented at events all around the world, and has even appeared with Miley Cyrus for Converse. Suite à la présentation d'Ann Makosinski, nous aurons une séance de questions et de réponses. Si vous avez des questions qui vous viennent en tête pendant la conférence, veuillez les saisir dans la portion à droite du clavardage de Feedloop. Directly following Ann's talk, We will have some time for Q&A. If you have any question for Ann as the session is going on, please put them in the chat in Feedloop. We will try to get to as many questions as we can. Please join me in welcoming Ann Makosinski.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm genuinely so excited to talk to all of you. I'm imagining all of you, albeit virtually, listening out there around Canada. My name is Ann Makosinski. I also go by Andini. I'm 24 years old now, which I know sounds ancient, but it will spring upon you sooner than you imagine. I grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island, and today I'm going to share with you a little bit about my life, my experience doing science fairs, and just some general advice I have for you guys. Maybe some of you are a little nervous, but don't worry. I've been to the science fair many, many times, and I did the Canada-wide science fair twice. So I'm so thrilled that you have all made it thus far. You should be all very, very proud of yourselves. All right, let's start off with a little bit about my own journey. This is me with some voltmeters in my mouth. It was a very safe childhood. I learned a lot, as you can tell. And my first toy was actually a box of transistors and other electronic parts. My mother was slightly concerned I was going to stab myself, but my dad was like, "Nah, she got it. She'll learn. It's fine." And it was a very interesting experience. So because I wasn't given many conventional toys, I would instead take my hot glue gun and garbage from around the house and piece together my very first inventions, which of course never worked, but the idea of taking the resources around me and piecing them together to make something better, or in my case, to improve my situation of boredom as a child, came quite naturally. And from there, I began taking apart a lot of old electronics as well. And I was just very curious on what was inside things. And how things worked. So I have a little video of me presenting to my dad some of my many inventions that are made out of garbage. So I thought I'd share with you some of those today. All right.
This invention was my second invention. And it is called creation. The one I just showed you is called invention, because that's the first one I made. Now this one, you see this flat one is post so he can sit down on him, or I can sit down on him. Creation. But I don't sit very long because he can break.
All right, so those are some of my early inventions. So we all come from someplace, and that was my background. And in general, my growing up experience was just a little bit perhaps unconventional compared to my classmates. The only time I was given a Barbie, my dad threw it in the garbage, and instead of having a dollhouse, I made my own out of cardboard and hot glue, and I have no idea what I stuck on there. Hopefully my mom threw that one out because she's kept quite a lot of my early creations. I also began soldering. I know some people say soldering. I say soldering. You can say it either way. I began using a soldering iron. I was probably 9 or 10 at this age, and I was soldering circuits for students at UVic, which is University of Victoria. So that was safe, but that was also really fun. So I just had an interest in science that also extended to insects and bugs. I was always collecting insects in the backyard because to me they were just free pets that I could collect. I also ate them on occasion, which was less glamorous. I also was raised on opera and silent films from the 1920s. So most of my schoolmates at class just thought I was a little odd and did not know what SpongeBob SquarePants was, for example, but it's okay. We all go through it. And so because I always had this kind of interest in tinkering and seeing how things worked, and I also loved presenting my inventions, or in general, I was also doing speech lessons, and I loved drama and well, not real life drama, but like drama as a subject, and doing local plays and things like that. My parents suggested that I join the local science fair when I was in grade 6. So let's see. Oh, these are some awkward phases of me in middle school, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. So do not fear, life gets better. Just like to put that out there. This is me in grade 6, however. Everybody thought I was a guy. Everybody would literally, my dad showed me a screenshot of a Facebook status he made back in the day that literally said, I am tired of people thinking my daughter is Daniel Radcliffe from Harry Potter, because it would just happen a lot that I looked like him. And as any, my mom's from the Philippines, my dad's from Poland, as any good half Asian kid, I got the bowl cut for too many years. So it was just kind of a look that I had. So my first science fair project, because I was a little tentative and didn't really know what I was getting into, it was actually a science class project that I had done in school about comparing different laundry detergents. I just made an extra step, made it a little fancier by measuring the amount of light my samples that were washed with different detergents reflected. Tide does work better than sunlight, according to my early findings. So it was a really nerve-wracking but also fun experience, and a lot of kids that went to my old school were doing science fair, so I got to see them, and it made me feel like I still had friends, which was also a big factor for me doing science fair. But in my school, nobody did science fair at that time, and now they all have to because of me, which I'm happy about. Maybe not them, but yes, this was me doing science fair. I was the only kid in my class that did it. From there, I ended up doing 10 science fairs. These are just various pictures of awkward stages of my life. And all my projects were instead in the area of alternative energy harvesting, which is harvesting energy that's always around us, but we don't necessarily take advantage of regularly just yet. So obviously solar cells are a great example of this. However, they are becoming more and more incorporated into our daily lives, which I love. I also played with thermal energy and kinetic energy, which I will get into a little later on. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time today and reflect on my Canada-wide science fair experience, which I was so lucky to attend twice, once when I was in grade 9 and once when I was in grade 10. It was the first trip that I had really taken away from home with kids that were just like me. And that was a very special experience to just share and meet other people. And I hope you guys get to talk to each other as well, even if it is virtually. And I hope you will return for next year, which would be really awesome if it could be in person. But it was just such a fun experience, and meeting kids that were also making science fair projects was, for me at least, a very foreign experience because none of my classmates from school were doing it. And actually, one of these girls in the photos here, she came from my old school. And so I knew her since kindergarten, but we went to separate schools, and then we got to come together and do science fair one year together. So that was really fun. Some of my best growing up experiences come from science fair, the award ceremonies, my friends chasing me with asparagus, because at that time of my life, I was afraid of it. So people would like chase me with it. And sleeping late, sleeping in, getting breakfast in our pajamas. It was just such a fun experience. Here's some more photos. I was on Team BC, which was really fun. So hello, if anyone's here from Team BC, congrats. And it was a really fun experience of also connecting with other kids from around Canada who had different situations or different environments that they lived in than me. And it was a very valuable and mind-opening experience. And I really appreciated also, it really felt like the Canada-wide science fair was taking care of us and making sure we were going to be okay, even if a lot of us, it was our first time at the fair and we felt quite nervous, especially about judging and setting up our projects and all of that. It just felt like they really wanted us to be here, and they were just celebrating our presence. So congrats to all of you guys who have come thus far. It's going to be a really, really fun time. And I personally feel like the most skills that I use nowadays all were developed through doing science fair. For example, it's called science fair, but really what you're learning is this huge combination of skills in the sciences and the arts. You have the science part, which is doing the research, asking the question, experimenting, making a prototype, collecting your results and data. But then you also have the art part, which is you had to write this whole written report about it. You have to make a poster board, or maybe for you, it's a PowerPoint that in a very nice visual way can help explain your project. And then you also have to be able to present your project and talk about it to maybe like a person from in public viewing that has no background in science, or a little kid, to a professor who's an expert in that field. So it also taught me a lot of skills in communication that I'm very, very thankful of and now use every day. So truly, science fair is one of the most valuable learning experiences, and I'm just thrilled that you guys are all here. Anyways, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my science fair projects that I did. I'm half Filipino. I actually spent some time in the Philippines. I went to kindergarten there for a couple months as a kid. And I had made some friends, and I was writing to one of them. She was at an internet cafe and writing to me. And she told me that she had just recently failed her grade in school. And that really surprised me because she was just like me, just in a different part of the world. So I was, I think, 13 or 14 at this time. And I asked, well, what happened? And she said, oh, well, I failed my grade at school because my family can't afford electricity. So I have no light to study with at night. And that was really surprising to me, that somebody else around the world, a girl just like me, didn't have something as simple as light, which I totally took for granted growing up on Vancouver Island. So I decided to base my science fair project around her problem and see if I could actually invent a light source that wouldn't require any batteries. And that resulted in my first project, not my first project, but my first project that went to the Canada-wide Science Fair, which was the piezoelectric flashlight. I basically took a bunch of piezoelectric discs, which have these crystals on it that if you put a bit of pressure or vibrate them, they'll produce a small electric charge. I put them all in like a circle, and then I had a gear and a crank, and I hit all of them at the same time. And I produced quite a bright, usable light. It was just very noisy, and you had to turn it. So I was like, okay, this. And I went to the Canada-wide Science Fair, competed with that, and won, which was fun. And then the following year, I was like, okay, I did the kinetic energy of humans. This year, let's try to do the thermal energy of humans, because we're basically like walking 100-watt walking light bulbs. We have so much energy radiating out of us in the form of heat that's not being captured. So I ended up using Peltier tiles. I'm sure maybe some of you guys have them in your own projects. They're also known as thermoelectric generators. They have two dissimilar metals inside of them. And if my hand is the tile, you heat one side of the tile and you cool the other. You get a very small amount of electricity. So I decided to heat one side with the palm of my hand, as that was the warmest part of my hand, and cool the other side with a hollow aluminum tube, as that would allow for maximum air convection currents to flow through and around the tube and cool it even further. Sorry, it's very hot where I am, so I'm a bit overheating. So these were my very first flashlight prototypes, which I believe I probably brought to the Canada-wide Science Fair the second time I went. The first time I went, it was in Prince Edward Island, which was so cool. And I actually took back a Ziploc of red dirt from there because I was like, this is amazing. I've never seen this before. And then the second time was in Lethbridge, Alberta. And so you can see my prototypes are very simple. It was just like an aluminum tube, plastic PVC piping from Home Depot. I'd cut out a slot and glued some foam on top. I had a very, very simple circuit and different kinds of Peltier tiles. And yes, I presented that at the Canada-wide Science Fair and won there, which was so exciting because I truly thought my project was very simple and I did not think anyone would be excited about it. I was just excited to go to the fair with all my friends. So yeah, that was really cool. And then it ended up that someone told me about the Google Science Fair happening. Oh, these are 3D printed prototypes slightly later on of the flashlight as well. It ended up being that someone had told me about the Google Science Fair. So at the end of my grade 10 year, right around summer, I applied for the Google Science Fair online, ended up being one of the 90 regional finalists around the world. This very embarrassing video of me went viral at that point, of me talking about the flashlight, which was part of my submission for the fair. And then in the start of my grade 11 years, when I went to the Google Science Fair, which was on the headquarters at Mountain View, and won there. And that is, I don't like being dramatic, but when my life changed and kind of my schedule of what day-to-day life was like definitely changed for me then. In grade 12, I created the e-drink as my final science fair project, which is a coffee mug that harvests the excess heat of your hot drink and converts it into electricity. So eventually, if you drink a lot of coffee, you could give your phone a boost of energy. It was inspired by my classmates' problems of their phones always running out of battery and their coffee taking too long to cool down. And that was just like a really fun last project that I did. I did end up also in the later half of my grade 11 year and the later half of my grade 12 year, go to the International Intel Science and Engineering Fair. I don't know, maybe they have a different sponsor now, so it's called something else, but I was on Team Canada for that. And that was such a cool experience to meet even more people from around the world. And I definitely think I would not have done as well at that fair if it hadn't been for me going to the Canada-wide Science Fair twice before and really preparing myself for the scope of everything and how to present and how to, do all that. Because the more practice you have with that, the better. And then basically since then, it's been a really cool journey. I wouldn't be where I am today if it hadn't been for Science Fair. I don't even know where to begin. I did the Google Science Fair. I got on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon to present both my inventions at separate times. And that was, again, a really cool experience. And I do a lot of public speaking now as my job, which did die a tragic death during COVID, but it's being revived. So we're excited about that and hopefully things getting back to being in person soon. My degree, actually, when it came for me to pick what I wanted to do, I ended up turning down an engineering scholarship and asking to do the arts program instead at UBC in Vancouver, much to my parents' chagrin. But this was because I had received a lot of attention for my inventions at this time. And I became really confused if engineering was something that I wanted to do, or if it was something that everyone else around me expected me to do. And my parents definitely had been putting a lot of pressure on me since I was quite young to do engineering. So like any good teenager, I was like, absolutely not, I will not do it. And I did arts instead. However, I've always had a very big passion for the arts. Maybe some of you guys can also relate to this, of having multiple skills in different areas that aren't just sciences. And I think traditionally we've always viewed art as a hobby and science as a career, or, we would pit arts and sciences against each other, and people who pursue the arts have certain stereotypes about them, and people who pursue the sciences have different stereotypes about them. And I really struggled with that identity as a young teenager and as a young girl, of being like, oh my God, the only example of scientists that my friends and I see is the Big Bang Theory. Like, that, and the way that women were portrayed on that was not accurate to how I felt and all my friends that I had in the sciences. And so what I've settled on is what I like to call being a Renaissance woman of the 2020s, where you have multiple skills and multiple interests in the sciences and the arts, and you try and do both of them. And that's exactly what I try to do in my life nowadays. I'm writing my first book. I have a publishing deal, which I'm really excited about. And it's about the inventing mindset and how we're all innately inventors. We wouldn't have survived as a human race if we didn't invent constantly. And I'm also pitching a TV show that I really want to host about futurism. So it kind of brings together my passions for science and art in a really fun way. And hopefully that's what I get to keep on doing in my life. All right. I also, over the past couple of years in 2019, 2020, designed a line of children's toys that run off of green energy. This was like a wind gear one to demonstrate kinetic energy. Then I had one that used my now patented technology of the flashlight within a toy, like a bunny. So you would put your hand on the back of the bunny where the Peltier tile was, and the eyes would light up. And you could kind of take the whole toy apart and put different animal pieces in it. And I also had a solar cell demonstration, which was like on a turtle's back, these solar cells would be, and then you would put it in the sun, it would start singing. And then when you took it out of the sun, it would stop because there's no batteries inside. So it's like singing in the sun turtle instead of singing in the rain. Unfortunately, I made some bad business decisions and all that fell apart, but it's okay because I feel like I've learned from my biggest mistakes. And I think the times in your life, and you will have these where you go, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. Those are the times you learn and grow the most. So never be afraid of quote unquote failure or things not working out the way you would hoped or imagined, because there's always a silver lining. There's always a huge learning gap and curve that you have in those types of situations. And you can always just pick yourself right back up and start all over again. And can be terrifying at times, but if you believe in yourself and you believe in your potential and what you can do, you'll always get back up and start fighting once again. My tips for you guys for the Canada-wide Science Fair: just have fun, Don't be nervous. The judges are people. They're normal humans. They'll have questions for you. And, you know, it can feel scary, but just remember, as long as you do your best, you'll be okay. That's kind of how I've gone into everything in life. I just go, I'm doing my best. That's what matters. End of story. Make sure you've rehearsed, you know, a little bit of how you're presenting, be able to think on your feet, prepare some answers for potential questions they may ask. Do not like read word for word off your PowerPoint and like have your PowerPoint or poster presentation just literally be your entire written thing. You should be able to have some words, but then be able to kind of present more out of your mouth than like reading off the screen, because that never goes off well from my experience. Have a lot of pictures too, lots of evidence of what you were creating or researching, lots of data to show, and just, you know, be excited. It's a fun time. Don't be too worried, just have fun, and you'll get along great. Yeah, as long as you can think on your toes a little bit, you'll be fine. All right. I kind of talked about this earlier about the combination of science and art, but I love this quote from Steve Jobs, which is, it's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. And often the best inventions of our time are this kind of combination of science and art. For example, our phones are the perfect example of this, where the interface and the science and the tech and the circuits inside it are designed to work perfectly well, but our phones are also part of our fashion. You know, it's aesthetically pleasing. And it's important to see how design and science come into products nowadays, and just in general, how the arts and technology can be brought together. And so passions that you have in either field that you feel are very separate can actually be brought together in a really beautiful way. One of my friends is Dr. Merritt Moore. You can look her up on Instagram. She's super cool. And she's an astrophysicist, but she's also a professional ballerina. So she has this enormous robot arm that she programs and dances with. So there's many ways you can bring together your passions of science and art. I'm trying to do that by hosting a science-related TV show. It's just very hard to sell science-related TV shows because we watch so much reality trash nowadays. So hopefully one day it'll get picked up. My other just tips in general for you, for creating, for being inventors, because you all are, is just to be open to inspiration. It can arrive at any time, at any place. I always carry around with me a little notebook and a pen, and I jot down ideas or draw them out at restaurants or whenever I'm waiting in line, because now with our technology and our phones, we don't really allow ourselves to be bored anymore. And I think when you're quote unquote bored and your mind is wandering, that's when the best ideas come. This is one of my favorite old people that people over the age of 50 will probably only know. He's an actor called Richard Chamberlain. And as a good person who is obsessed with him, I was reading his autobiography and I actually saw this amazing quote, which was, "Where do ideas come from? Preceding any creation or discovery is attention. To the extent that I give anything or anyone myself, to that extent, I am giving them myself." And I think today, because we live in a very distraction-ridden world, it's really important to think about who and what you're giving your attention. You are an average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. So who are those people? Are they inspiring and encouraging to you and your endeavors? Are they themselves motivated? Those are all really important things to consider. And when you're making an invention, you need to give it your full attention. Quality over quantity for sure, even if it's just half an hour a day. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have been giving so much time for your projects, so you know exactly what this is like. You got to sit down and concentrate. But also when it comes to people, when you sit down with them or you were the friend, try and put down your phone and just give your full attention to them. You never know what's possible until you ask. Always ask for help. Always ask for what you need, what resources. You never know what you can get until you ask. That's a very New York thing that I've learned in the past few years living there, is just ask for things and you actually might get it. And a lot of times people will see a younger version of themselves in you and they're going to want to help. So don't be afraid of asking. I know as Canadians, we are very polite and like sometimes a bit quiet, but I'm going to say from moving to New York, one of the best things I learned was just ask for what you need help in. I love this quote to end on, which is, "Creativity isn't a luxury, but a necessity, a means of survival." Phil Cousineau, who has written some amazing books about creativity. This quote comes from one of his writings. I just love this. We are all very creative people. People in the sciences are creative. You all are. I'm sure you all have amazing projects and inventions and research that you've done. So don't be afraid to share it. Let it shine this weekend. And I hope you guys have a fabulous time. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Ann Makosinski. And now I will take some of your questions.
Wow, thank you, Anne, for sharing your story with us. What a great way to kick up the week. Now we would like to open it up to question from FeedLoop audience. So if you have a question, please put it on the right-hand chat in FeedLoop. We'll get to as many questions as possible. So si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas à les saisir dans le clavardage de FeedLoop. And Anne, it looks like we already have some questions for you. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, yes. So what is the biggest challenge while competing at the Canada-wide Science Fair? And what was your biggest challenge? And how did you overcome it?
My biggest challenge competing at the Canada-wide Science Fair, I think, was actually before I went to the Science Fair, which was just completing my poster and my project on time. That was definitely the most stressful period for me because I'm a bit of a procrastinator. So I was definitely always like wrapping up loose ends right before I would, like the night before I would leave for a fair. And then I think just worrying about what the judges were going to ask me was always a point of stress. But I found after like the first judge that I had, and once the ball started rolling for the judging day or the couple judging days, I became less and less nervous.
Awesome. Some of our finalists would like to know, which scientists do you look up to?
Which scientists do I look up to? I mean, as a kid, one of the first sciencey books that I read was a book about Marie Curie. And so I was very inspired by her. And then also like Nikola Tesla, I was very excited about. So I would say those are, and then this is super unrelated because he's not maybe technically a scientist, but when I was a kid, there was this show on Canadian television, the one TV show I was allowed to watch. And it was with this guy called John the Acorn Nut. And it's the most Canadian show you'll ever see. And he just went all around Canada talking about bugs. And I was obsessed with him. So also him.
Awesome. Now, you did mention art and science. So some of our finalists are wondering, what would you say about opportunities to pursue both arts and science in post-secondary education? Do you think it's possible to pursue both?
Well, I think it's as possible as you make it for yourself. I mean, there are literally programs that you can do. I'm not sure of any Canadian ones off the top of my head, which I should know, but I know like NYU, New York University, they have this school called Gallatin where you can make your own degree of two separate subjects. So you could do like, for me, I had wanted to do a film degree and then like an electric engineer degree. But I didn't get in, so it's fine. But you know, there's many ways to always pursue arts and sciences together, and for me, what I found was the easiest is that I study English literature inside of school, so I can learn about storytelling and film and writing inside of school. And then outside of school, I have my own company. I'm inventing, I'm designing, and researching when I have time. So it's really about what you make time for. And it's also important after high school to see what are you gravitating towards spending your time on, because that will really tell you where your passions lie.
I kind of like this degree, make your own degree. It's like calling for make your own.
I think that's how it should be for all universities. Yeah. We just, yeah.
So another question we have, how did you overcome feelings of imposter syndrome as a woman in STEAM or STEM? I kind of like STEAM, though. It includes the art.
I love STEAM. I'm all about STEAM, which is science and art. That's a good question. I feel like sometimes I still face that. But I kind of go, I've been given, whatever opportunity I'm looking at the moment. And if someone feels like they want to give it to me, why should I say no? Just because I feel a little insecure or feel like I shouldn't do it. And I feel like when things are a little scary to me, those are the times where I've learned the most and grown the most. So I'll always most likely say yes to an opportunity, even if it feels a little like, ooh, should I be here? Like everyone's way older than me and way more experienced. And I used to worry about that, but now I'm kind of like, you know what? If they wanted me there, sure, I'll do it. So yeah, I don't know if there's like a specific formula for overcoming something like imposter syndrome, but I kind of go like, I've made my space, my own area in the space, and I'm here. So let me do things. And if people are excited about it, yay.
Love your confidence there. Do you still talk to any people that you met through Canada-wide Science Fair?
That's a good question. When I lived in Vancouver, it was a bit easier because one of my classmates, or old classmates that also did Canada Science Fair. She was there. Now I live in New York. Right now I'm in Paris, not living, just visiting. But yeah, I do still stay in touch. Actually, one of my good friends who went to the Canada-wide Science Fair and then also the Intel Science Fair with me, Catherine Bowman, she and I stay in touch and we have phone calls still like every couple of months. And she just got into Stanford for their medical program there. And I'm so, so proud of her. So yeah, she's such a beam of light and so inspiring. And yeah, so I definitely do still stay in touch with people.
Awesome. For the next question, you're going to have to make some prediction here. Where do you think you would be today if you didn't take the chance in science fair?
I would have probably done a degree in film, and I would probably be trying to get into film and directing or acting. Yeah, I don't really know. I think I always wanted to do film, and I always just loved science fair as well. And I was the kid that would make every project in school that I could into like a film project instead. But then actually it's funny because this is so stupid, but a bunch of this woman came to interview all my close friends and all my close teachers in my grade 12 year because they were trying to write a script about my life. It didn't end up happening, but she had all these interviews with my teachers and I never saw any of them until like last year. I remembered about this thing and I was like, hey, can I actually see what my teachers were saying about me? And all of them said that they were kind of surprised about science fair because I didn't really talk about it until it came out and everybody knew. And they had said that they all thought I was going to do film. So that's probably what I would be doing right now.
Awesome. So it looks like sometimes when you create a science fair project, you need some knowledge to solve your problem, to come up with an invention. So students, finalists are wondering, how did you gain your knowledge in thermoelectric technologies?
That's a good question. Well, I had been playing with electronics since I was a young kid. I was really fortunate that my dad also had these passions in both electronics and film, which both he passed on to me. And I kind of grew up in a household where if something was broken, instead of throwing it out, my parents would spend like a few hours trying to fix it. So I was just kind of naturally put into an environment where there was a lot of electronics and fixing things in that sense. And my dad, when he was a kid, he would get scolded for taking things apart by his mother. They also grew up during like World War II Poland. So it was a totally different atmosphere. But he wanted me to grow up in a space where I could take things apart safely and like not be scolded for that. So he definitely made that happen and then was my mentor during science fair. And my mother kind of like was the more organized person and would like try and keep me on track to actually like finish things on time, because as a teenager, it's very hard to do. So my dad was the main person that kind of showed me basic electronics. And then from there, I was just kind of taking books out of the library about science, or I was like going online and researching. And specifically about thermoelectric generators, I think I read about them in some like really, really old electronics manual my dad had from like the 1950s or 60s. Yeah, I don't remember specifically, but I had read about it in some very old electronics book we had at home and got curious about it.
That's good. So in schools now, we do a lot more of social emotional learning and taking care of our mental health. So our finalists are wondering, how do you keep a healthy balance with your work and your mental health?
It's hard. You know, we all go through our ups and downs. I would say I always have an outlet for whatever emotions I'm feeling. Especially if I get frustrated at work or things aren't happening the way I wish, you know, I always try and take a step back. I'll go for a walk with music. I'll play the piano. I will do a dance class, or I'll like dance in my room alone, or I will like sing very loudly to Elvis Presley if I'm very upset about things alone in my apartment. Or what's always very helpful, obviously, is seeing a friend and talking about things. But I do find writing in my journal any emotions I have is very good for processing things, and kind of also, this sounds terribly boring, but sitting in silence and thinking about things and then realizing things is always very helpful. But it's hard, you know, I can definitely get very swept up in work. And as an inventor, you know, it's a very solitary existence sometimes if you're not at the stage where you're working with people. So I definitely try to balance seeing people and getting work done, which has been great living in New York, but I actually found that after COVID, it became too much of seeing people and not as much work done. So right now I'm kind of recalibrating to find the perfect balance.
Awesome. The next question is actually very inspirational. They ask you, how do you think as young scientists we can change the world for the better?
That's a great question. I think, if young people are seeing the world in a very different perspective than people who are 40, 50, 60 years old, and you can probably feel what's changing and what's going to come. So I think also young people now feel very empowered through social media, through the internet, to have their voice heard. And so as a young scientist, as all of you guys are, sorry, that was not proper English, as young scientists, as all of you guys are, the idea that, I can come up with an idea, make it into something physical in front of me. And if I share it on the internet, it actually may inspire or help many, many more people around the world. That's really exciting. And so you can change the world. It doesn't matter what age you are, how much education or you have, or what background you're from. Anybody has the potential to make a positive impact on the world. And that's exactly what I learned through science fair, was that it didn't matter that I was only 15 and that I hadn't gotten my high school diploma yet. I had still made something that inspired countless of other girls and boys to also want to be inventors and take apart their parents' old VCR player or whatever it was. And so never feel that you don't have that power, because you all do. And it's very exciting.
That's great. Our last question is actually very relevant your answer will be very relevant for our finalists, because they are entering judging today and on Wednesday. So they have a judging question for you. How can you elevate your judging presentation if you have a more simple project?
My project was very simple. I was surprised people got excited about it. The good thing about having a simple project actually is that more people will be able to understand it, and they'll be able to sum it up in one sentence very easily. I think when you know your project and you know your material well enough to be able to explain it to anyone of any age and to explain it in one sentence. There's a very good Albert Einstein quote about this that I don't remember, but it's specifically about, if you can understand something, you can explain it in a sentence. That's kind of what you hope for judging. And don't feel like your project is simple. Like, still be excited about it. I think judges love when they feel the enthusiasm from you and you give a very big presentation or big energy presentation. And I'm not sure, I'm guessing it's mainly virtual for judging. So really make sure, especially for online stuff, you have to amp up your energy. Gesture with your hands, move around, it doesn't have to be super formal. I was always making like tiny jokes or trying to make the judges laugh at some point during my presentation. And as long as your true personality comes through and they feel how enthused and excited you are about whatever you discovered, that will get them excited. And I think that's one of the most important things to remember for any project, whether it be simple or very complex.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. So thank you everyone for your questions. If you want to learn more about Anne, we recommend that you view her speaker portal in Feedloop, you visit her website, and you connect with her on social media. N'hésitez pas à visiter le profil d'Anne sur Feedloop et à la suivre dans les médias sociaux. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Finalists, I invite you to make the most of your experience. Participate in events and activities, connect with other finalists from across the country, and most of all, have fun. Make sure to take photos throughout the week and share them with us using the hashtag CWSF22.